Wraith by William Toney. Chapter 18, Shadows in the Diner. The gang member stumbled into the diner, pale and bloodied, clutching his side as if holding himself together. His panicked eyes darted around the room, scanning the faces of the sparse late-night patrons. He mumbled something under his breath, words fragmented and shaky, before collapsing into a booth near the back. Lilah gasped softly, her hand instinctively clutching Aaron's arm. "That man, he's hurt," she whispered, her voice tinged with worry. Aaron didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on the man, his senses sharpening as he noted the trembling hands and the rapid rise and fall of his chest. The gang member reeked of fear, a scent Aaron had come to recognize all too well. He leaned slightly toward Lilah, keeping his voice low. "Stay here!" "No way," she shot back, her voice firm. "If he's in trouble, we should call for help." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Help won't fix this," he muttered, standing and moving toward the booth. Lilah hesitated but eventually followed, staying a step behind him. The man looked up as Aaron approached, his bloodshot eyes widening in terror. "You!" he croaked, trying to push himself further into the corner of the booth. "Stay back! I didn't do nothing!" Aaron froze, his expression unreadable. "I know who you are," he said evenly, "and I know who you work for." "I don't work for nobody no more," the man blurted, his voice trembling. "They're all gone. Marcus, Davis, Rocco, all of them. It's a damn ghost town." Lilah glanced at Aaron, her confusion evident. "Who's Marcus? What's he talking about?" Aaron ignored her, his focus entirely on the gang member. "What happened to them?" he asked, his tone cold and unyielding. The man's breath hitched. "Gone, man, all gone. And you're the one who started it, ain't you? They said the Wraith was out there, picking us off one by one." Lilah looked between them, her unease growing. "Aaron, what is he talking about?" Aaron held up a hand, silencing her. He leaned in closer to the man. "Why are you here? What do you want?" The gang member flinched at Aaron's proximity. I just need to lay low, okay? Get out of town. It's not safe no more." "What's not safe?" Aaron pressed. "Who's after you?" The man's eyes darted around the diner, his paranoia palpable. "It's not just you. There's something else out there. I've seen it. The shadows. They move, man. They talk. It's her." Aaron stiffened. "Her?" The man nodded frantically, his breath coming in short gasps. "She's got power. Real power. Messes with your head. Makes you see things. Hear things. It ain't natural." Aaron exchanged a glance with Lilah, who looked increasingly alarmed. "Who is she?" Aaron demanded. The gang member shook his head. "I don't know her name, but she's been sniffing around, asking questions. She's got him wrapped around her finger." "Who?" Aaron asked, his patience thinning. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Wright. Councilman Wright." Before Aaron could ask more, the man's body tensed, his eyes rolled back, and he convulsed violently before collapsing onto the table, motionless. "Aaron!" Lilah cried, stepping forward. Aaron checked the man's pulse, his expression grim. "He's gone!" "What happened to him?" Lilah asked, her voice trembling. "Was it his injuries?" Aaron shook his head. "No, this was something else." Back in the far corner of the diner, unseen by all, Allistor leaned casually against the wall, his golden eyes fixed on the scene. "Ah, right," he murmured to himself, his lips curving into a sly smile. "And here I thought Eris was still sulking in the void." The devil's interest deepened as his gaze shifted to Lilah, standing beside Aaron with worry etched across her face. Allistor's expression soured, his usual amusement replaced by a flicker of discomfort. "You," he muttered, his voice low and venomous. "Why do you feel so wrong?" But he dismissed the thought as quickly as it came, his attention returning to Aaron. "This should be fun," he mused, vanishing into the ether. Meanwhile, at City Hall, Councilman Charles Wright paced the length of his opulent office, his hands clenched behind his back. A sleek silver pendant rested against his chest, catching the dim light. Across the room, Eris lounged on his desk, her legs crossed elegantly as she inspected her nails. "Another one dead," Wright muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "We're losing control." Eris didn't look up. You're not losing control, Charles. You're losing pawns. There's a difference. They're my pawns, Wright snapped, turning to glare at her. And without them, I'm exposed. Eris finally lifted her gaze, her expression one of mock concern. Oh, poor Charles. What a tragedy. She swung her legs off the desk, standing gracefully. But let's not forget, you wanted this power. You wanted to climb higher than anyone else in this cesspool of a city. And you promised to help me, Wright growled. Eris stepped closer, her smile sharp. And I am helping you. But power has its price, darling. Surely you knew that. Wright opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, Eris turned her attention to the hallway outside. Her eyes gleamed with mischief. Ah, our dear deputy mayor. Let's have some fun. Eris, don't, Wright began, but it was too late. The deputy mayor, a stout man with a perpetually anxious expression, entered the room. As soon as Eris's gaze locked onto him, his demeanor changed. He froze mid-step, his eyes glassing over as his expression went slack. Dear deputy, Eris cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness, why don't you tell us about that little affair you've been hiding from your wife? The man's face contorted in horror. I didn't mean to. Eris, Wright barked, his frustration boiling over. Eris waved a dismissive hand, breaking her hold on the deputy mayor. He stumbled, blinking rapidly as if waking from a nightmare. Without another word, he turned and fled the room. Why do you insist on this nonsense? Wright snapped. We have bigger problems. Eris smirked, leaning against the desk. Because, Charles, boredom is the true enemy. And besides, it's not nonsense. It's practice. Wright gritted his teeth, his hands curling into fists. But he knew better than to argue. Eris held all the power, and he was little more than her pawn. Eris tilted her head, her smile widening. Now let's focus on your little problem with the Wraith, shall we? Back in the diner, Aaron and Lilah stood in tense silence. The body of the gang member still slumped over the table. Lilah finally broke the quiet, her voice trembling. Aaron, what's going on? What aren't you telling me? Aaron met her gaze, his own filled with a mixture of regret and determination. I'll explain everything, he said, but not here. As they stepped out into the night, Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. And somewhere in the shadows, Allistor watched them go, his smile sharp and knowing. Let the games begin,